Hey, welcome to episode 7 of Cady's Corner, presented by Godzilla Media and sponsored by our good friends over at Mohawk Honda, where they continue their Kelly Blue Book Instant Cash offer this spring, making it the perfect time for you to get top dollar for your trade in. And you don't have to worry about waiting 3 to 5 business days or 2 to 4 weeks. None of that crap. Same day you bring your vehicle onto the lot at Mohawk Honda, they will put a check in your hand for the fair value amount that they deem proper for your vehicle. Or hey, maybe instead of just dropping your car off and getting the fair market value and getting cash in hand, maybe you want to do a little trade off. Go get yourself either a new vehicle or one of the tremendous certified pre-owned used vehicles on the lot over at Mohawk Honda. You can check out that inventory either at mohawkhonda.com or by visiting any of their social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, or so on and so forth. All the Mohawk Honda leasing and sales consultants are ready to work with you to find the best vehicle to fit your budget and lifestyle, or just make sure you get top dollar for that trade in. So go visit Mohawk Honda in Scotia, Glenville, and upstate New York. Mohawk Honda, well, they always go out of their way to please you. And welcome to episode 7 of Cady's Corner, like I mentioned. Here, presented by Godzilla Media, sponsored by our friends at Mohawk Honda. I'm Brian Cady, giving you another week in review of Major League Baseball, specifically the three regional teams of interest here in upstate New York: the Mets, the Yankees, and the team we're going to start with today, as per usual, the Boston Red Sox. Gotta say, this is a team that's starting to show a little sign, some minor signs of hope a little bit. Now, granted, this is still a team that is 14 and 24 and 14 games behind a record-setting Yankees squad, which we'll touch on in a little bit. But you take 2 out of 3 in Texas against the Rangers. You take 2 out of 3 at home against the Astros, including, and that's despite a game where Nathan Eovaldi just couldn't figure out where the strike zone was and gave up 5 home runs in an inning. I mean, this is a little sign of hope. Now, here's the bad side of it, though. I still feel like this is an offense that's only got 3 people truly producing and leading the way right now, and that would be obviously Xander Bogaerts, Rafael Devers, and JD Martinez. This is still a squad where, aside from those 3, everybody else is hitting 225 or lower, and that 225 is Christian Vasquez. So that's not really very good. Trevor Story is still hitting just 205. I don't know. Verdugo's 206. Kike Hernandez is 182. Jackie Bradley Jr. Let's not talk about that. Bobby Dahlbeck. He was just if you had to name the biggest disappointment for the Red Sox this year from a hitting perspective and a performance perspective, it'd be kind of hard to break the tie between Trevor Story and Bobby Dahlbeck, because Bobby Dahlbeck came in with a ton of hype, ton of expectations from the Red Sox crowd. He's only batting a $161. He's got 1 homer, 4 RBI, only 5 total extra base hits, 3 doubles, a triple, and a homer. And he's striking out. His strikeout to walk ratio is 4-1. He's striking out 31 times to 8 walks. This is not the kind of production that this Red Sox fan base was looking for out of Bobby Dahlbeck. Now, Trevor Story obviously comes with a ton of expectations, not just because of what he did in Colorado, but because of the contract that he was given in free agency as a 29-year-old by the Red Sox. But at least he's producing at a better rate than Bobby Dahlbeck. He's still, yes, he's only batting 205, but at least he's got 10 extra base hits, 8 doubles, 2 home runs. At least he's driven four times as many runs as Bobby Dahlbeck, 16-4. He's got 4 stolen bases. At least the numbers dictate a better start for Story than Dahlbeck. Now, granted, they're both still disappointments, but I feel like there needs to be more focus on Dahlbeck here. Obviously, Story is going to get the majority of the publicity because of who he is, but let's not forget about the struggles of Bobby Dahlbeck as well. Nick Pivetta puts out a gem against Houston on Wednesday, a complete game, gives up only 1 run against Houston in a 5-1 victory. Like I said, Eovaldi, who knows what the hell happened with him. You have Walker on the DL, which is not great, but hopefully he'll be back soon. And then your bullpen, man, Robles has been decent so far. Austin Davis, Jake Diekman, Tanner Houck. His ERA is inflated considering his start, so he's actually not having a terrible season. Um, but let me put it this way: if this Red Sox team thinks they're going to get in the playoffs as currently constructed in the pitching department, then they have a problem. They have a problem. Unless Pavetta continues to show signs of development, like Wednesday night against Houston, and Garrett Whitlock continues to produce the level he's at. He's only 1-1, but he still has a sub-3 ERA. His strikeout to walk ratio is almost 4-1. His whip is under 1. So, you know, that's something to build from. Rich Hill, 42, but somehow still with a sub-3 ERA and a whip of 1.1. He's not going to strike out a lot of guys, but he's also not walking a lot of guys either. 3-1 strikeout to walk ratio, 21-7. It's intriguing. It's a very intriguing squad where there's some signs of hope, but I don't want Red Sox. I don't think Red Sox fans get too excited yet. That all being said, there's there's an opportunity here because now you have 4 at home against Seattle, which has been hot and cold and inconsistent over the course of the year to the point where they're towards the bottom of the division now with Texas and Oakland. Yeah, they're actually below Texas now. The Mariners are entering the 4 game set 17-21, 7 games behind the Astros in the division. And then the Red Sox will have Monday off before taking off to the Chicago to face the White Sox for 3, who the White Sox a team where they can't seem to figure out whether they want to go or like they're very stop and go. They can't figure out whether they want to be good or bad, and they're just kind of mingling in mediocrity at this point with an 18-19 record and still somehow only 3.5 behind the Twins in the Central. So I think this is going to be a week where we truly figure out whether going 4-2 this past week was a fluke for the Red Sox, or if this is a sign of them starting to finally turn things around and figure things out with this squad without having Chris Sale in the rotation right now. Moving on now to the New York Mets. Mets, mixed bag for them. They went 1-2 at home over the weekend against the Mariners, in which every game was a 1-run game. But then they turn around and they've taken 2 out of 3 so far against St. Louis, splitting the doubleheader on Tuesday and then winning Wednesday night in a game where Seth Lugo tried his damnedest to blow a 4-run lead in the top of the 8th, but ends up getting away, only giving up 2 runs, a 2-run homer to Nolan Arenado. And then the Mets said, not so fast, my friend, decided to put up 5 in the bottom of the 8th to provide extra insurance in an 11-4 win. This is a Mets team, I'm telling you. I've been saying this. Bad news, though, throughout the week is that number 1, James McCann, out 6 weeks at minimum with a broken bone in his wrist. So now they got to lean on Tomas Nido as their number 1 catcher, along with the kid that they called up from AAA. And bear with me as I try to remember his name. Mazeka, Pat Mazeka, who's already made 4 game appearances. And, not too bad, 3 of 11 off, 3 of 11 with a double and a solo homer. So maybe he's the main answer at this point. Who knows? But there's going to be a lot of back and forth, I'd assume, between Mazika and Naito. Starling Marte is coming back from the bereavement list, I believe, for the finale of the series today against St. Louis. And then they go to Colorado and San Francisco for 3 games. Yeah, by the way, tell me if this makes any sense to any of you and how ridiculous MLB scheduling can be at times. So they're sending the Mets out for 6 games, essentially to the West Coast, 3 in Colorado, 3 in San Francisco. Then they come home for 3 against Philly and Washington. And then they're going to start the month of June with four at the Dodgers, three at San Diego, and three at the Angels. So you're going to send them out to the West Coast for 6 games, bring them all the way back home for 6, and then send them back out to the West Coast for 10 games before you bring them back home again. Now, granted, they're going to have a day off between the end of the San Francisco series and the start of the series against Philadelphia next Friday. But it's I don't know. This scheduling is just weird. I don't quite understand it, but hell, whatever. It's MLB. They do what they gotta do, man. They do what they gotta do. Um, and losing McCann. I mean, it's not the worst loss in the world. Let's just put that out there. You could have lost. You could have lost bigger difference makers than a guy batting 196. Um, but you know, they're doing what they have to do to keep on maintaining where they are in the NL East. And then looking at the rotation, Tyler Mcgill, 15-day DL, inflamed right biceps, which is on his throwing arm. You hear any kind of injury to the throwing arm, and it makes you kind of freak out, especially considering that Mcgill had this injury announced within a couple days after probably the worst start of his career, and it makes you kind of freak out a little bit on the inside. But we just gotta wait and see at this point. Um, Good news did come down though about Jacob Degrom, in that his recovery from his injury is improving. They're still not going to give an official timetable for return about whether it'll be June, July, after the All Star break, before the All Star break. No official announcement on that, but DeGrom has been throwing, and they did say that the injury did improve in the MRI they looked at earlier this week. Now, again, let me just take a look here and pull up the official news on DeGrom. Um, so the thing is, the continued healing in the scapula, obviously good news. He continues to build distance and velocity during his throwing program. But again, no definitive timetable, because here's the thing: DeGrom still has to go through a full spring training build-up process in order to be properly ready for major league action. And then one would assume that would include a few spot starts, whether it be in the minors or wherever. So my assumption, don't expect to see Jacob DeGrom until probably around the 4th of July or later. That'd be my assumption, but we all know what assuming does. All right. But in the meantime, I mean, the rotation's holding it down pretty well. Scherzer, relatively good start last night against St. Louis. Bassett continues to develop. Carrasco, a pleasant surprise for this rotation so far. Taiwan Walker is doing his job. And then the bullpen, I mean, again, Diaz continues to do well. Drew Smith, um, Jason Shreve. This is a good squad the way it's put together right now. So as long as Mcgill isn't out for a long duration of time, and you can get DeGrom back early enough for that push in the back half of the season, this should be a squad built for the postseason potentially, and wrap up the NL East at some point. Because right now you're 6 clear of the Phillies, 7 of the Marlins, 7.5 clear of the Braves, who are still under 500. In fact, the entire division, aside from the Mets, is under 500. The Mets are 25-14. Phillies are 18-19. Miami 17-20. And the Nationals we don't really need to talk about. But this is a Mets squad where you gotta feel good if you're a Mets fan. Even despite suffering your first series loss of the season last weekend against Seattle, look, there's worse teams you could have done that against. You could have done that against Washington, Cincinnati, Oakland, Detroit, Baltimore. There's worse teams out there you could have suffered that first series loss to. Because Seattle, they might not. I would dare say Seattle's an underperforming team of young talent. So we'll go with that. By the way, before we get into the Yankees, just want to remind you that the Albany Empire, they're ready to rock and roll with another home game this weekend. They're back in action this Saturday night at MVP Arena. And Godzilla Media is going to have the pregame show for you starting at 3:30 in the afternoon on what I believe could be a rainy Saturday. So it might not be a bad idea to go indoors to enjoy some tremendous football as they will host the Sharks. The Jacksonville Sharks. Kickoff 7 p.m. if you're going to go to the game. And if you're interested, tickets are available for the game at AlbanyEmpireNAL.com or just visit the MVP Arena box office in downtown Albany. That said, let's go to the New York Yankees. A historical start for this Yankees squad continues as the Bats heated up in Chicago to take 3 out of 4 from the White Sox. They've taken the first 3 in Baltimore, including back-to-back one-run games, the last 2. They wrap up their 4-game set in Baltimore later today, and then they go home for 3 against the same White Sox that they just took 3 out of 4 from last weekend, and then 3 against Baltimore, who they're going for the 4-game sweep against in Baltimore today. This is a squad where here's as if Yankee fans didn't have enough signs of encouragement. Let's give another one. They're showing they can win a multitude of ways, right? They can win one-run games that are close and low scoring, like they showed against Baltimore on Wednesday night, or they can just blast you out of the ballpark with 10, 11 runs like they did against Chicago at times this past weekend. And that's a great sign because to me it means there's this squad that's not just going to rely on their offense to win ball games. They're not afraid to rely on Garrett Cole or Severino or Cortez to carry the load, and then if they need to transfer things over to the bullpen where you got Holmes and King and Chapman. Like you have a foundation, Loizaga. You have a foundation where you don't have to always rely on 5, 6, 8, 10 runs from your offense to win a ball game. That's what I like to see from a Yankee squad because it seemed like for the longest time, this Yankees team, this organization was focused on offense, 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 and just letting the pitching, just kind of be there, just kind of exist. This squad is built where they can win any way they want. They can. And that's very encouraging for Yankees fans. Now, a couple quick stats before we get into breaking down a couple things from the past week. The Yankees are the third team in the last 20 years to win at least 27 of the first 36 games. The other two teams to do that, the 2016 Cubs and the 2005 White Sox, they won the World Series that year. Also, third best start in franchise history through 37 games, where the other two teams that did better than them were the 28 and 39 Yankees, who both went 30-7 to start the season, and both won the World Series in 4-game sweeps. So, if we're going based on historical statistics, those are both great signs for the 2022 Yankees. But again, let's not put the cart before the horse. One step at a time. It's only mid-May. We're only 37 games in this season. There's still another 125 to go in the regular season, plus the playoffs, which could be another 4, 11. So figure you need to win 11 to win the World Series. So let's just add in some losses. We'll call it another 16, 18 games. So you're looking at 180 roughly total for the season. So again, like I said, let's not put the cart before the horse. That being said, Clay Holmes coming in and getting a 6-out save on Wednesday plays to what Aaron Boone said over the past week, that he is approaching this team with a closer by committee mentality. Now, I'm going to wholly admit, my initial reaction, I freaked out when I heard that. Because for all the football fans out there, the phrase I always love to use is when you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. You know what I mean? If the head coach is dependent on two quarterbacks producing at high levels at the same time, you really have no quarterbacks because that means the head coach is just indecisive and doesn't really have a starting quarterback. He just has two average quarterbacks who are doing whatever. That's kind of the mentality I had when I initially heard that quote from Aaron Boone, where if you have multiple guys that can be closers, you don't really have a true closer. You just have a bunch of guys that can throw well, but nobody dominant enough to be a true closer. And I thought about that. I decided not to freak out in the end because let's just call a spade here. Aroldis Chapman is 34. He still can throw 100 when he wants. That's not the problem. But Aroldis Chapman has proved time and time again over the course of not just his time in New York, but also when he was in Cincinnati and in Chicago, that he is a head case. There's just something wrong with the mental with him. And some nights, inexplicably, it it just doesn't happen for him. Now, I already spoke to a couple of Yankee fans about this on Wednesday. They're like, "Well, he's he he's perfect in his save opportunities." Yeah, he's 9 for 9 in save opportunities. He also blew 2 games. He walked in a winning run against Baltimore, like the second week of the season, and then he was the reason they had their one loss in Chicago last weekend when he blew a tie game there. So, and here's the worst part. This comes back around to a comment I made about something that Michael Kay said a couple weeks ago, where Michael Kay was very, for some reason, very specific in pointing out that you can tell when Chapman's gonna have a good night or a bad night just from seeing how he is on the mound, whether or not he's sweating. Because Chapman has said that if he has a good sweat going, he's gonna pitch well. But if he's dry and clammy, he's not gonna pitch well. Like, I think that's the stupidest thing I ever heard about a reliever. Any pitcher. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of any MLB pitcher. That you got to rely on how he's sweating to see if he's going to do good or bad that night. It's a crock. All right? It's a crock. But what this tells me with Aaron Boone, going back to what he said about closer by committee, is that while Chapman is officially the closer listed in your program, he's not going to be afraid to pull Chappie if he's struggling to get a save. At least that's what it tells me, because he was ready to pull Chapman at one point Tuesday night. Because Chapman got the first 2 guys out, then allowed 2 guys to get on. And I'm trying to remember who was warming up in the bullpen. It might have been Holmes, because they already used Chad Green. It was Castro or Holmes warm up in the bullpen. He had somebody warm up in the bullpen in case Chappie gave up another runner on base. But Chapman was able to get a pop fly to LeMahieu to end the game, and you never had to worry about that. But Boone is not allowing a long leash, or as long of a leash as he has in the last couple years, to Chapman. And that to me is a very, very good sign, because I honestly believe Boone got too relaxed and reliant on Aroldis Chapman, the legend of Aroldis Chapman, and not the actual performing human being in Aroldis Chapman. He got caught up in the 101-mile-an-hour fastball. He got caught up in the nasty slider, but he wasn't paying attention to the actual performance of Chapman in the moment. And to see what Clay Holmes has done in the bullpen, to see what Miguel Castro has done, Michael King, Wandy Peralta, even Clark Schmidt. It's hard to not agree with Aaron Boone in this approach. It's hard not to. Because he legitimately could rotate four guys around doing save situations. Because Chad Green's had closer experience before when the Yankees had bullpen injuries in the last few years. Obviously, Chapman, Clay Holmes, who got the 6-out save on Wednesday night, and then Michael King. With the way he's performing, why not? So, to have quality arms like that you can go to and not question whether or not they're going to get the job done because of how good they are, that says something about your bullpen. And then, of course, you got to figure how much that complements the rotation right now. Cole had some struggles, but got through 7 innings, even up just 2 runs on Wednesday night. Cortez continues to be nasty. Tyone, Montgomery, and Sevy continue to be sufficient and getting the job done overall. This is a Yankees team, by the way. Their rotation right now, you combine the starting records of those 5 starting pitchers, 13-3. 13-3. Go find another rotation in baseball that has a record like that. It's hard. Not that easy. Not that easy at all. Um, and then I have to make an admission. I have to. Oh, by the way, this doesn't. One last thing about the bullpen. Because of the sufficient number of arms in that bullpen, to me, this makes Aroldis Chapman a potential trade piece for prospects. Now, here's the thing. Because Chapman's a free agent after this season. I'd have to find somebody to take the remainder of his $16 million for this year in order to get rid of him. But I think there's a couple legitimate suitors out there that he'd work for. I think he'd be a fit for the Phillies because their bullpen has been a mess. Corey Knebel hasn't quite been the shutdown closer they expected. I think he'd be a good fit for the Phillies. I also think he'd be a good fit for the San Francisco Giants, especially if they can get themselves up to the level of the Padres and the Dodgers and put themselves in a contention in the West. I think he'd be a good fit for the Giants because they have the disease I mentioned earlier, where if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. It's the same thing with their bullpen. They have a bunch of good guys, but nobody that really stands out as a great guy to be used as a closer. So Chapman, I think, could be a good fit there as well. Obviously, there's still 2.5 months until the trade deadline, so it's going to be a little bit, but I think there's potential there where if you feel confident enough about your bullpen, you could trade Chapman for some prospects or a lesser name bullpen arm that's doing well this season and a prospect or two. There's also another name I'd like to float out there. The problem being his value keeps dropping the more and more he swings and misses, and that's Joey Gallo. Also, the last year of his contract, his salary a little less of a hit than Chapman would be on the team. His salary is only 10.25 million. But you can't sit there and tell me that Joey Gallo is a top 3 outfielder for us. I'd argue he's 5th. I'd put him behind Stanton, behind Judge, behind Hicks, and I'd even argue I'd put him behind LeCastro or Gonzalez right now. He just is deplorable right now. Absolutely deplorable. Joey Gallo, my friends, he's striking out more than he makes contact with the ball at this point. 45 strikeouts. Batting a $176. And this guy's getting paid 10 plus million? It's awful. 18 hits and 102 at bats. I don't see it. I don't see it. Give me Hicks, give me Judge, give me Stanton, give me Gonzalez, give me LeCastro when he's healthy. I'd say Gallo's the 6th most productive outfielder on this team right now. And he's getting paid boatloads compared to LeCastro and Gonzalez. However, to put a positive spin at the end of this for the Yankees, which is weird because I started out very positive and then I went super negative. There is one person that is making a liar out of me, or I should say, starting to make a believer out of me. We'll put it that way. Josh Donaldson, man, he's turning it up the last couple of weeks. He's gotten the average up to 254. He's had some clutch hits, clutch performances. He's still got 34 strikeouts, but he's also walked 19 times, showing more plate discipline than Gallo. He's now got 5 homers, 14 ribbies on the season, and it seems like Donaldson. I'm not saying he's started to turn into the Toronto Blue Jays Josh Donaldson. That's that version of him is long gone. He's not going to go for 35, 40 homers this year, but he is starting to make a little bit of a believer out of me. Like he's actually starting to be a productive part of the lineup, and it's hard to argue that. Which is interesting because if there's one thing you don't want your entire team to be hot at the same time because then they're going to be cold at the same time. So kind of for Leffa, his production's kind of fallen off the last few weeks. He's gone from about a 300 hitter down to 260. Donaldson, meanwhile, he's gone from like a buck 90 hitter up to 254. Um, Judge has been continuously hot. Stan's been continuously hot, although he kind of cooled off for about a week, week and a half at one point. Um, Rizzo has cooled off. So, you know, it's all cyclical. It's got to be all cyclical. Where some guys are hot, some guys are cold, because you can't have everybody hot and cold at the same time. Otherwise, you're screwed as a manager, you know. So, all things considered, Josh Donaldson, good on you, and you're making me look like an idiot from the preseason. Real quick before we get out of here, other news and notes around Major League Baseball. Cincinnati Reds pitched a combined no-hitter on Sunday, this past Sunday at Pittsburgh. They still lost the damn game 1-0. Poor Cincinnati. God bless them. Oh boy. And then one other piece of news to touch on. So Matt Harvey, former Met, former whatever, most recently I believe with the Angels. He got suspended 60 games this week in relation to dealing substances in the locker room, including dealing opioids to Tyler Skaggs prior to his death. Now, I'm not encouraging what I'm about to say, but I have to beg the question. How have there been no legal ramifications against Matt Harvey at this point? Now, I'm not necessarily saying that he should be charged with manslaughter. That's not what I'm saying. But how has the family of Tyler Skaggs at least not tried to do a civil suit against Matt Harvey in relation to the death of Tyler Skaggs? Like, and again, I'm not sitting here and saying that Matt Harvey giving opioids to Tyler Skaggs was a direct correlation to Tyler's death. But I don't know. Something doesn't feel right about the whole situation. And I feel like if Tyler Skaggs' family had any sense, they would do a little digging and double checking on things. That's all I'm going to say. It's horrible. I feel bad for the situation Matt Harvey put himself into. Obviously, I feel horrible for the family of Tyler Skaggs. It's just a bad situation all around, and I'm just going to leave it at that because, again, I'm not a doctor. I can't really pinpoint and detail whether or not what Matt Harvey was given Tyler Skaggs led directly to his death. I can't do that for you. But I think at least the family should kind of look into it a little bit. Just going to put that out there. That all being said, thank you again for checking out Cady's Corner, episode 7, presented by Godzilla Media, sponsored by our good friends at Mohawk Honda. Next episode, episode 8, I can already tell you a couple of things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a problem for the Yankees organization. Some would look at it as a good problem. Some will look at it as a horrible problem. Plus, we'll discuss Kumar Rocker, the former first round draft pick of the New York Mets, joining the Tri City Valley Cats in Troy. We'll break that down. And a Major League Baseball team that is a complete disgrace to the name of Major League Baseball. We'll touch on all that next week, but for that, you got to wait a week. In the meantime, enjoy this upcoming week of baseball. Good luck to all the Red Sox, Yankees, and Mets fans. And thank you for checking out episode 7 of Cady's Corner. Until then, happy baseball, everyone.